Thank you for joining us today at today's Council Countdown. I'm Chloe G, and I am joined here by our Public Information Officer, Hannah Nichols, here at Beaufort County. We are thrilled to have everybody tuning into today's meeting. It's been a few weeks since our last council meeting, which we're going to be having later at 5. But before that, we're going to have our Finance, Administration, and Economic Development Committee meeting that will be starting here shortly at 3 p.m. So, Hannah, could you give us a little bit of a rundown of what to expect for our first meeting?
Absolutely. We have a packed schedule today. For those of you following along at home, just a reminder, you can always view our meeting schedules, agendas, packets, and minutes at BeaufortCountySC.gov. Today we're going to start with the Finance, Administration, and Economic Development Committee meeting at 3 p.m. It will begin with a discussion on virtual attendance at council and committee meetings. As a discussion item, there's not necessarily going to be any action that comes out of that. It'll be completely up to the committee and what they decide to do. It could just be a discussion and then they move on. Then we're going to hear the recommendation to council to repeal and replace the purchasing ordinance. So this is a big deal. This new ordinance would establish procedures for the purchasing of goods and services as requested by county departments and elected officials. Item 10 is the recommended approval of an ordinance authorizing Beaufort Memorial Hospital to pledge revenues in connection with the issuance of healthcare revenue bonds. After that, we'll see the transfer of authority for conducting municipal elections from the town of Port Royal to the County Board of Elections and Voter Registration. Item 12 is the acceptance of block grant awards to our Alcohol and Drug Abuse Department. And item 13 authorizes a grant application for an economic development project called Project Micro. And then item 14 awards a contract for the paving of the Bluffton Township Fire District's training building. And the final items today relate to committee, board, and commission appointments. That was a really quick gloss over, but it's a pretty full agenda today.
A lot of things to expect here in our finance meeting, and after the Finance, Administration, and Economic Development meeting, there is going to be the Beaufort County Council meeting that starts at 5, and it's been a little while since we've had one of these after tropical storm, and I'm expecting there to be a lot of great things to come from that one as well.
You are correct. The tropical storm made us reschedule this meeting, so it's pretty full as well. Do you want me to go through that agenda now?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So we hope you stick around after the 3 o'clock meeting for our 5 o'clock. For that meeting, as always, we start with a report from our county administrator, Mr. Michael Moore. And then today we're going to see a proclamation for the Lands End Woodland River Festival Day from Councilman Glover. After that, there's going to be 2 presentations about procurement and purchasing before we head into our public hearing and action items. The first 3 items are all going to be time sensitive, meaning that they will have pushed forward directly to the council meeting, depending on how they go in this committee meeting. So that would be I believe that is the procurement code, the issuance of bonds for BMH, and the economic development Project Micro. If they are approved at the committee meeting, they push forward to the council meeting tonight with high priority.
Okay.
Then after that, we are going to see a discussion by council on potentially providing the report and supporting documentation from Hainsworth Sinclair Boyd to state and county law enforcement. Then we're going to see the 3rd reading of an amendment to the county's traffic impact analysis policy. Items 19 and 20 provide for A-tax and H-tax appropriations. Item 21 is the first reading of a potential rezoning for a property located on Eustis Landing Road. And then the next item would provide for the purchase of real property that has been identified as Cooler Tract B. And then the final item tonight before council heads into their executive session is the conveyance of real property to Beaufort Memorial Hospital for the development of workforce and affordable housing. And that piece of property is located at 333 and 335 Buckwalter Parkway. As you just heard, glossing over everything, quick overview. But if you want to review anything more in depth, you can get that agenda packet at BeaufortCountySC.gov.
That was a lot. I agree. So
it's a lot.
Thank you, Hannah, for taking the time to run over all of that. And we'll be back and we'll see here in a little bit kind of what comes of that. But before the beginning of this meeting, we do have some announcements to make. Now, if you tuned in with us before, you've heard this one before, but it is still just as important. It is hurricane season all the way through November 30th. Beaufort County is urging all residents to go ahead and prepare now before a potential storm hits. This is your opportunity to see what long-term storm preparation residents can make now to make sure they're finalized and ready. So the first one of those is to know your zone. In South Carolina, state and local officials issue hurricane evacuations based on zones in coastal counties. Know your hurricane evacuation zone instantly with the SC Emergency Manager mobile app and hurricane.sc, which is South Carolina's online hurricane guide. Another tip is to go ahead and prepare your home. Do a safety check and make sure your home is best able to withstand the effects of a hurricane. Have your roof inspected, double check hurricane shutters, and make sure your insurance policies cover everything that it needs to. And our last tip is to remember your route. Be aware of the closest hurricane evacuation route ahead of the upcoming season. This will allow for a more efficient and safer route out of the hurricane's path. Once you've learned it, stick with it and remember it. Rely on the blue hurricane evacuation signs, not necessarily your GPS. So we had one tropical storm already, and hopefully we have a quiet rest of the season, but you always want to be prepared for anything to happen, as it is pretty common here in the area.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing those tips with us today. The Beaufort County Accommodations Tax Board has begun accepting state A-tax grant applications from organizations in Beaufort County wishing to receive grants from the 2% State Accommodations Tax Fund. All applicants this year must have attended one of the 2 state A-tax workshops that have been offered. The next workshop will be Tuesday, September 3rd at 5:30 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. So if you haven't had a chance to attend that workshop yet, you have one more chance before applications are due on Friday, September 13th.
Continuing on with the announcements, Councilmember Howard will host a joint with Richard Geyer from the Beaufort County Board of Education this Thursday, August 29th at 5:30 p.m. This meeting is going to be held at the Port Royal Community Center at 1514 Richmond Avenue. The topics in discussion will be about population growth, especially along Salem Road and Paris Island Gateway, traffic safety, including pathways and sidewalks, and any other topics brought up by attendees. Representatives from Beaufort County Engineering will also be present to answer any questions.
The Beaufort County Passive Parks Department, as always, is offering a fascinating and exciting nature program schedule with birding, trail walks, and special events. You have one more opportunity to take it outside this August with a trail talk this coming Saturday, August 31st at Widgeon Point at 9 a.m. These events are free to join. They are interactive, they are fun, and we encourage you to get outside this summer. You can contact the Passive Park Naturalist at destiny.rains@bcgov.net for more information, or you can visit our website to see the entire program schedule. Now, I was able to attend Critters of Crystal Lake this past week, which was wonderful. Turns out we have 4 new animal ambassadors.
Really?
Who knew? So we've got 2 corn snakes, and we've got several frogs, and they just got a box turtle. So you can always take the kids by to meet the Critters of Crystal Lake during that free program.
Wow, sounds like a great time. And Crystal Lake is a very diverse, and there's so many different animals, from birds, alligators, fish, you name it, and you can find it out there at Crystal Lake. So encourage you to go out to any of these events. Keeping on with the good news, Beaufort County Solid Waste has launched a new interactive app to help residents reduce household waste and ensure that they are recycling properly. Recycle Coach is now available for download in the App Store or any mobile device. Recycle Coach is a network that will allow the county solid waste department to communicate recycling information to the residents of Beaufort County. The platform includes engagement and educational tools, and they help people manage and correctly dispose of their waste. You can find it on the Google and Apple Store. The goal of the app is to empower residents to make smarter disposal decisions and take an active approach to reducing household waste. The department hopes this will increase recycling and reduce the contamination of the recycling stream. Residents can access Recycle Coach from their computers or mobile devices. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you go and download that.
And our final announcement today, Nexus Care of Beaufort County, formerly known as the Beaufort County Alcohol and Drug Abuse Department, is holding a Recovery is Worth the Walk event to raise awareness and support for September as National Recovery Month. The walk is going to be held on Thursday, September 19th from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. at Battery Creek High School, and it is free and open to the public. You can register now online.
And as we're counting down the minutes, just a few more until this meeting is underway. We would like to thank everybody for tuning in here to BCTV. You can find all of our programs on cable channels Hargrave, Comcast, Spectrum, and we're, of course, streaming live on BeaufortCounty.tv. We also have an app on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire. Beaufort County Television also has launched a new channel available 24/7, the Beaufort County Traffic Channel. Traffic Channel camera offers over 50 live views of the most important and frequently used highways, streets, roundabouts, and busy intersections through Beaufort County. Don't forget, you can always check out the latest news on our website at BeaufortCountySC.gov or follow us on social media. So, like I said, the meeting will begin in a few minutes. So, thank you for joining us here, Hannah, and we will see you back after this meeting.
Thanks for having me, and please stay tuned.
I'd like to call the Finance Administration and Economic Development Committee a meeting to order. This is Monday, August 26th, 2024. Our start time is 3 p.m. If everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. I think we do have a quorum here today with I think everyone's here except for Mr. Glover. I think he's on his way. I've been told he's going to be here a little bit late. If I could ask for someone to approve our agenda today.
I'll make the motion to
All
approve,
right,
please.
thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll go ahead and approve the agenda without objection. Would then also like ask someone to approve our minutes from June 17th, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll
Dawson. And second, Ms. Brown. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, they are approved without objection. Sarah, do we have anyone that has signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak during our public comment today? Seeing nobody, we will then move on, and that is to number 7 on our agenda, which is the Assistant County Administrator's Report. Mr. Robinson.
Sorry, get myself organized.
Thank you for coming today.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm just going to introduce the finance team. So the first part of the, is that in our ACA report? Yes. So our first part of the ACA report here is to introduce the finance team to go over our current budget status. Christine is here to talk about that. Followed up with Valerie. She's going to talk for a minute about our budget calendar and what else were you talking about? Transfers and budget transfers. So she wanted to go over those with you. Those are some things we committed to last year that we said we would bring forward to Finance Committee each month. So without further ado, and Bryson made the presentation. She didn't want to say so, but she did it. It looks really nice.
It does take a team. Thank you.
Hello.
Ms. Webb, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, so we wanted to give you a financial update on the general fund, the capital improvements fund, and the enterprise funds. One more time. Okay, for the general fund 1,000, our operating fund, we have, for comparison, fiscal year 23 fund balance of $61,355,000 and a preliminary fiscal year 2024 fund balance of $76 million. And we are closing the books this Sunday, September 1st, so these amounts will change. And for current fiscal year 2025, we have beginning fund balance of $76 million, plus revenues of $5.6 million, less expenditures of $18.4, give us a fund balance of $63,223,000. And the revenues are lagging, of course, because of the property taxes. We won't see that jump until December. And most of that revenues is for Register of Deeds, recording fees, and EMS medical fees, and automobile taxes. And most of those expenditures are for salaries and benefits and group insurance. And what else for that? Hold on one second, I had that. Oh, yeah, and we made the the quarter 1 transfers to the other funds per the budget. Okay. Okay, so this is a summary of the detail that we gave you in your packet. We wanted to give you every line item so you can see the activity and the actuals to budget percentage. In summary, for revenues, it's 4%, and expenditures is 12%, and total expenditures and encumbered is $25 million and 16%. And below, we have a net loss of 19.469, which is expected because we are in only the second period of the year. Okay, so for our next fund, the Capital Improvements Fund, we have fiscal year 23 fund balance of 18.4 and 24 fund balance of 18.6, which below we have a current as of August 21st, 18.6 million. And most of those revenues are for automobile taxes and a small amount of expenditures for renovations to buildings.
Christina, those unencumbered funds, the balance?
That is not, it's on the next page.
Oh, okay.
So here, we have the revenues and the expenditures, actuals to budget percentage is less than 1%, and the encumbrances here are 1 million, 1.139. The amount will grow when we close the books. The carry forwards from the POs will increase this encumbrance line. So you'll see that for this capital improvement fund. Okay, so the percentage for that is 1%, and the net loss with encumbrances and expenditures is 1.069. Okay, for the solid waste fund, we have fiscal year 23 fund balance of 2.6 million, and fiscal year 2024 is 2.87 million. And as of August 21st, we have 1.971 million. And these revenues are for waste disposal fees and delinquent taxes, and most of these expenditures are salaries and benefits, and waste management and waste hauling. Okay, so the revenues expenditures is less than 1%, and the expenditures are 7%. Total spent and encumbered is 62%. And below, we have a net loss of 7.78 million. Okay, for our stormwater fund, we have fiscal year 23 fund balance of 16.5 and a fiscal year 24 fund balance of 18.8. For our fund balance at August 21st, 18.4. And most of those fees are from stormwater utility fees, and the expenditures are salary and benefits and a little bit of bond interest payment for the 2017 GO bond. Okay, the percentage of revenues is less than 1%, and expenditures is 4%. And the total spent and encumbered is 14%. And our net loss is 1.46 million. Okay. For the airport funds, we have Beaufort Executive Airport 5,100 of fiscal year 23 fund balance of 3.7, 24 fund balance of 3.9. And below, we have, as of August 21st, 3.89 million. And most of that revenue is for hangar rentals and fuel sales, and the expenditures are salary and benefits and jet fuel expenditures. Okay, for the Hilton Head Airport, we have fiscal year 23 fund balance of 30 million, fiscal year 24 of 32.4. And as of August 21st, we have 32.7 million. And most of that revenue is for rental car commissions, fees, airline rental space, and fuel sales. And the expenditures are salary and benefits, advertising, janitorial, and utilities, and security. And the revenue actuals to budget percentage for Beaufort Executive Airport is 5%, expenditures 4%, and the total spent and encumbered is 31%, which gives us down here a net loss of $696,895,000. And for Hilton Head, the revenue percentage is 12%, expenditures is 7%, and total spent and encumbered is 31%, and a net loss of about $1 million. So everybody has a net loss right now, but that is expected for being only in the second period of the year. Does anybody have questions before we move to transfers?
Any questions?
Christine, you mentioned rental cars. What were you talking about, rental cars?
Oh, the rental cars for the airport,
Yes.
rental car commissions, that's Hilton Head Island. They have, where they have commissions that they get paid for the rental cars, like,
Oh, they do?
You know,
Oh, I didn't
Hertz.
realize that.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
and- okay. Turn it over to Valerie.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Ms. Altoff, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. So per Chairman Passmate's request, we have created a little budget transfer request transaction recap. So this is what we have had so far year-to-date since July 1st it's by date. So you can see the DSN department transferred about $22,500. They had that amount in their professional services administration line, and we transferred it into their housing lines, so it's in various project codes for their houses. But it was a lot to detail out, so I just left it on one line. Solid Waste requested a transfer from their infrastructure line for vehicle purchases of $200,000. And then you can see in the far right two columns, we recapped what their revised budget for the from account and the revised budget to their to account became. So the infrastructure account became $625,000, and then their vehicle purchases account is $255,000. The next, the traffic department made a request from supplies and materials to uniforms for $5,000 to cover a boot purchase, one-time boot purchase. So it became, their supplies and materials went down to $95,000, and then their uniforms fund went up to $7,500. The sheriff's office requested a transfer from maintenance contracts to dues and subscriptions for $10,000 for the renewal of Thomas Reuters Clear Perflex subscription. So their maintenance contracts went down to $2.4 million. Dues and subscriptions went up to $70,000. And then the sheriff's office also asked for a transfer from their salaries and wages account to their supplemental pay account. They have decided that they wanted to continue to offer some of the recruiting benefits that were made available through the ARPA funds, like moving expenses. So they added a $10,000 line to supplemental pay. It doesn't change anybody's numbers, it's just moving it amongst the salary lines. So their salaries and wages went down to $19.3 million, and then that supplemental pay became a $10,000 line item. So any questions about budget transfers or anything you want to see differently going forward as I present this to you each month?
I have a question on solid waste and recycling. They were not aware they needed 5 trucks during the budget setting process?
They
All of a sudden, we
were,
need it now?
the the vehicle purchase situation is kind of in limbo right now between the fleet enterprise contract and the lease program versus purchasing vehicles. So this is a Band-Aid, so to speak, at the moment.
That's good.
Yeah. Yes, it was in their plan. Mhm.
Any other questions for Ms. Altoff?
Additionally, I think John mentioned, I am working on the draft of the 26 budget calendar. And hopefully, we're going to kick that off in October. We'll be presenting Sarah with a couple of options to share with you to weigh in. That'll also be considered when you guys approve the budget, your meeting schedule for next year. So which is in November. And if you have any feedback, you can let me know.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. All right, and is that everything for our administrator report, John?
Yes, sir.
We're done? Okay. All right, well then, let's move on then to our agenda items. And the first one Actually, Mr. Passman asked me to add this to our agenda today. This is just a discussion. I think that there was a question about us doing meetings virtually and people being in attendance. And I said I'd be happy to put it on and discuss this and, again, talk about the pros and the cons. But I do think, Ms. Brown, was this something that you requested?
It
So
is.
if
Thank
you want to
you,
go
Mr.
ahead
Chairman.
and go ahead
Yes,
and
thank
just
you.
tell us what you're thinking.
People complain to me all the time about people being on Zoom. COVID's over, the lockdowns are gone, and it's not fair to some of us that come to all the council meetings in person on a regular basis. We were elected by the people to sit on Beaufort County Council in these chambers. It's called going to work. We are public servants, and we were elected as public servants, and we need to be in front of the public, not on a TV screen. What did we do before COVID? We all came in here and sat up here on this diocese. And I think we should get rid of Zoom, period.
All right, is there anyone that would like to comment?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. When we passed this ordinance back during the COVID times, it was clear that we did it because people were unable to come to the meetings. And as we continued the discussions, we decided that it was a good idea to keep it in place. And there was some discussion, I remember clearly, about limiting the number of times people could be absent and appear on television. All of that was discussed and decided that it had no merit in the ordinance that we were going to use, because if people are unable to attend these meetings but can attend virtually, they can vote from their place on the television screen. If they are not present, then they are not able to vote. So essentially what you have done is disenfranchise the wishes of about 18,000 people for every person who's not here. But if they could vote because of the ability to use Zoom, all of the people they represent would be represented in every one of our meetings. So I don't think it's a bad idea to keep it in place. I don't think that, I haven't heard in the 5 years I've been here one complaint from anybody that I represent about Zoom meetings. A great many of them use them themselves in their own businesses and find them to reduce costs and to be very effective in having the ability to communicate with people who may be ill, who may be traveling, who may have a family problem, or even need a root canal. Sometimes people just can't be here, and I think it would be a shame for us if they could be on the television to render their intellect and their discussions to our deliberations, and then to prevent them from voting is doing a disservice not only to them, but to the people that they represent. I see no harm in continuing the Zoom meetings.
All right, is there anyone else like to say something? And I'll be happy to speak up as well. And I was here whenever we weren't allowed to have Zoom meetings. It wasn't part of our protocol. And since that time happened, I have seen a much larger participation of people being able to be here for a meeting. Myself, I think I try to make it to every council meeting. I have not missed one yet this year because I think I've been on 2 virtual meetings, and one was I was on vacation. And being on vacation here in July, there was no way I could ever be part of the meeting. And the second time was I was feeling ill. I was afraid I'd come here and actually get everyone else sick. So I think that's something that we have seen more people involved, and especially more involved in the committee meetings. I've seen that. And again, that's why a lot of things are hashed out and a lot of discussions are made in committee meetings, because you have a larger percentage of people either online or here in person. But again, I completely understand, Ms. Brown, what you're saying. But in today's technology of where we are, doctors are using it. Every business now uses it. It's something that has become commonplace. But so, any further discussion?
Well, one other, I'm sorry, Dave.
No, go ahead.
Just one final thing. I mean, it sounds petty to say this, and perhaps it's a minor consideration. But every time someone is not here, but is here on the television, they're not submitting any mileage reports. And we're not spending money to have people come here from a distance I mean, sometimes those mileage reports can add up to hundreds of dollars. The person isn't here physically, but they're there, are able to talk and able to vote. And I don't think we have a lot of abuse on the part of people who attend these meetings. If people can be here, they come. This also, though, applies to our board meetings and our committee meetings. So what we would be doing is putting everyone at a distinct disadvantage on not only council, but our committees and our boards. If they can't be in attendance, then they can't participate and they can't vote. For example, York isn't here right now, but if he had access to a television, he would be here, he'd be able to vote. If he's not on television and he's not here, he can't vote. It's really that simple.
I didn't realize either, due to liability concerns, council members shall not operate motor vehicles while attending meetings.
That's because we used to have a council member who would be in his car, on the phone, in his car, causing a liability situation for the county, which would have cost us millions of dollars if he ever got into an accident.
Really? Oh, yeah, I didn't realize that.
That goes under common sense. But I'd like to comment,
I like
Mr.
that.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So I make every meeting, but for example, we had a very important meeting in July. My family was here for vacation on the island, and I made it clear that I wasn't gonna drive an hour in, come to the meeting, drive an hour back when I had my grandchildren here. So I was able to Zoom in, which was helpful for me. My granddaughters unfortunately got the picture, but it was helpful that I could still attend the meeting and voice my issues. So, I mean, if someone begins to abuse it, that would be up to the chair and vice chair then to have a conversation.
Okay.
And we do have here that you must be on video, so it means you can't just turn it on, then walk away and let it run for 3 hours, which I know we've all done with seminars. But you can't do that with this. You have to be visible and obviously not driving your motor vehicle.
Sorry, I interrupted you, David.
Oh, no, it's okay. Alice, you can go ahead.
Oh, well, you have it.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
I'd just like to say that it came in really handy when I had my hip replaced and I couldn't sit for long periods of time, but I could still attend the meeting even if I was kind of half standing and half sitting. And I think it's just something that none of us have abused and would not abuse it. So.
For the most part, I would say that most of us have experienced or utilized the opportunity to attend meetings via Zoom, or whenever the opportunity presented itself where we couldn't be here in person. So I don't think any of us are abusing it, and I don't think we should do away with it at all.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a benefit too, but one thing, if we wanna make any changes to it, maybe advance notice. If you know you're not gonna be able to make it, send it to clerk to council, make sure that she knows that we're gonna be attending via Zoom. The only issue I've ever had is there was one meeting that I wasn't able to attend. Tab, I believe, told me other people were gonna be via Zoom, but I never received the link for it. That's the only issue I've ever had with it, so.
Well, I think a link is sent out all the time. And by the way, if you have one link, you have the same link over, and
It's the
it's
same
only
link.
one
Oh,
link.
That's what
Okay.
you said, yeah.
You can go back to an email from 6 months ago and just press it,
Use the
and it's
same
the same link.
Well, that's good to know.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
So consider
So-
yourself informed.
there you go.
I've had numerous council members tell me that they were not going to be able to be there, they would be on Zoom. So it is.
Okay,
clear
so,
that we're
so
covered.
I think that these discussions are great, because, people come to me all the time and say this or that, whatever, but I do have a
People
lot.
complain to you about
Complain,
Zoom
yes,
meetings?
they do, they really do. And they're like, COVID's over, get back to work, blah, 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 whatever.
Get back to work. huh?
Yeah, get
Say
back
that.
to, yeah, that's what I have written down, get back to work.
Then they
That's
must have
what I
said it.
Anyhow, right. But anyway, you brought up a very good point, Mr. McGowan, and everybody else did too. And maybe I'm a little old fashioned, when I'm out of town or if I'm sick or whatever, I don't go on Zoom because I'm not very good at technology. So, yeah, I want to thank everybody for this discussion because I think it's good. The public can see, okay? We had a discussion and Everybody brought up the point.
Well, that's why we put it
So
on the
just-
agenda,
yeah,
so we
right,
can
yeah,
talk
so,
about it, and
yeah,
everyone
that's
has a
great.
chance to
So,
just
Yeah,
speak.
so I don't think we need to take a vote on,
Okay.
let's just leave it.
I don't think any further actions
Yeah.
contemplated.
No action at this
Okay,
time, but again, we can discuss anytime later if there is an
Yeah,
issue.
that's right. Yeah. Somebody comes back and says something.
And I need to step out real quick for an item. I'm gonna have Ms. Tabernick take over for me. I'll be right back, though. I need to make a phone call that just came through and take care of something, so.
All right.
Ms. Tabernick, if you could please take over as
Thank you,
chair
Mr.
while I
Chairman.
am gone for just a second.
It's my big opportunity. Okay, so we're moving on to number 9. Recommend approval to council of an ordinance to repeal and replace Beaufort County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 7, Division 4, Beaufort County Purchasing Ordinance to establish new policies of centralized purchasing and competitive bidding, oh Lord, for county departments and elected officials. It's basically our new purchasing ordinance, delegating purchasing authority to the county purchasing director, establishing procedures for the purchasing of goods and services as required by county departments and elected officials, and other matters related thereto. And Mr. Robinson, you're going to talk about this. And this was part of our workshop that we spent 2 hours, I think, on this, correct?
At least 2 hours it was.
Yeah. Okay, so you're on.
I had lots of hours of homework. Well, not just me and staff.
I know.
Had many hours of homework to catch up to all that work. So you're right. We began this procurement code, or the new procurement code, sometime November, December last year. Staff worked along with our outside attorneys to develop a code that was presented to us on June 10th of earlier this year. So that staff included members of our finance department, the purchasing procurement department, and our legal department, as well as our outside attorneys, to develop the document that we received in June 10th. So from June 10th, staff worked again. So at this time, it was executive staff. We had a new administrator on board. So Mr. Moore needed an opportunity to see this new procurement code that came forward. So the staff again, executive staff, went through the document once more. At that point, we determined it was best for us to hold a workshop to make sure we had an open opportunity to discuss the document in public, along with council, and seek input from members of the public or elected officials or department heads, anyone else who had some comment or concern. So we did that, and we addressed those during that workshop. So what we've brought forward today is a culmination of all of that work. So if you would, I have one document that is the major changes that we have developed since that June 10th date. Again, there's another document that was the original January copy that's been significantly changed since then as a group. But if you would, indulge me for a minute, I'll go through just a couple of the major portions that have changed since the workshop. And then I'll answer any questions or entertain any thoughts or concerns. So the very first thing I want to bring your attention to is page 1. It is the very first paragraph underneath the title. It is general provisions. It is section 502. And I'll tell you why it's important. This is a statement of policy and application. It shall be the policy of Beaufort County that all goods and services required by county departments, appointed officials, and elected officials shall be procured by a centralized purchasing procedures based on integrity, transparency, uniformity, and accountability. The provisions of the Beaufort County Procurement Ordinance shall apply to all contracts and all the procurement of all supplies, services, and construction entered into by Beaufort County departments, appointed officials, and elected officials. It shall apply to every expenditure of public funds for public purchasing, irrespective of the source of funds. Now, that's a pretty powerful statement. It means that we're going to be good stewards of public funds at all costs. If we continue through the document, the first few pages are definitions. You'll see many definitions added in that section. One of the very first one is an after-the-fact purchase. We talked about that at length during the workshop. We defined capital assets, we defined the capital bid process, we talked about the delegation of authority and what the delegate authority means. We discussed some other definitions that we added were non-responsive bidders. We defined more clearly what professional services are, the Department of Procurement, what the Department of Procurement Services Department is. So you probably see a little title change, and you probably hear me go back and forth. Well, I'll say purchasing and procurement. The title of that department is now I gotta go back and read it because I just told it to you. Is the Procurement Services Department. We refer to them often as procurement and purchasing and those, but Procurement Services Department. So we talked a little bit in the definitions, small and disadvantaged businesses, reference to the definition of sole source, split purchase, and unauthorized purchase. So there's a lot of changes, or not changes in definition, because the definitions are pretty standard, but we just made sure they were included in the definitions portion as they're referenced throughout the document. The next most significant change, mostly some wording, is section 2-506. This is the, in my document, it's page 9. There you go. So this is the procurement responsibilities, duties, and authorities. And this really has to do with the responsibilities of the Procurement Services Director. So we made small changes in there. Sometimes it's a simple word about the authority and responsibility of the Procurement Services Director. Overall, the Procurement Services Director must manage everything that's in this new ordinance. He is responsible for ensuring the ordinance is followed, and of course, his staff would fall underneath him. Some of those other sections we talked about, the delegation of authority goes a little further down in that section. The section E there, so yep, there it is. It's already on the board. So
Mr.
this
Robinson, do you have
yes.
questions or comments as you go? or
Oh,
at the
certainly.
end?
Certainly, if you like.
So one thing is, you, originally on page 6, we call it Procurement Services Director. But then throughout the document, we just call it Procurement Service Director. I'd like it to be consistent. You know me with my grammar.
Services or service?
Yeah, pick your poison
Gotcha.
either way, yeah. Sorry.
No worries.
Doesn't matter to me which one, but I want it to be consistent.
Certainly. We can address that. So where was it? Oh, we're at still section 506 over on page 10. I think it's 506E. E3 talks about the dollar limitations for contract execution. Number 3 discusses committees of a council shall have the authority to authorize the county administrator to execute contracts subject to this division, which is equal to or less than $200,000. That is what we have in place now. Ms. Tabernick and I had a conversation earlier about committees of council. We felt like that language may be a little vague as what is the definition of committees of council. The intent there are the 3 committees of council that are filled with council members. So versus trying to change this language to make that more effective, we will add a definition with your approval. We will add a definition of the intent of the committees of council to reflect those committees of council that are members of council
Right.
are members of.
Do you mean by
Okay.
name, like public facilities?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually,
Is a question.
it should be entitled the Standing Committees of Council.
We can certainly, yep.
Because once you put the word standing committees, it's a definition of what those committees are. If you put the specific names of the committees in, and for whatever reason,
It
we
changes.
change the names of the committees, you then have to go back to this ordinance and
And
change
change
that.
it again.
So
Excellent.
standing committees would say,
This is among one of the challenges that we have, is to making sure those words are accurate and appropriate, and that we don't have to come back in the future to do
Fix
a
it.
whole 3 readings or 4 readings with the committee to change a single word. So we can address that.
And I apologize to Mr. Robinson, because I read this 25 times and just saw it today, number 3.
I've probably read it 125, and I see something every time as well, so I'm with you. Excellent. I'm looking over at Brittany, making sure she's writing it down so I don't miss anything. Thank you. Got it. So definitions, we worked a lot on those first 11 pages or so that the definitions consumer, maybe there's 9. So there is a new section there that I want to draw your attention to that is also inside of 2-506. It's on page 11, and it is under number F and is Beaufort County procurement cards. This procurement card section, it's 1 through 4, and then G and H talks about specialty services and how it applies to, that's section H is different. But what applies to procurement cards is under F, 1 through 4. This sets up our future. The ordinance, what will follow the ordinance are updated policies and procedures, so an updated travel policy, updated P-car policy, those kinds of things. And this ordinance sets the foundation of work that those policies will follow. So under that section, Beaufort County procurement cards is authorized procurement cards, the use of procurement cards, the procurement card compliance expectation, and then how we manage misuse of procurement cards. So those details are there, and we'll follow that with a policy, and the policy will get much more in-depth than the ordinance. Any questions about that?
You talk about, John, sorry, go ahead.
Nope.
The policy will go into like how you justify having a procurement card
Yes, ma'am.
and how many, I don't want to set a number, but
Right.
that justification hopefully would cover instances where everybody didn't have a procurement card.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The policy is intended to be much more in-depth. The ordinance sets that foundation, and the policy really establishes the rules in a much more verbose way.
Sure.
Mr. McGowan?
I had a question about how
Yes,
to
sir.
you're talking about how to manage misuse. What does that mean exactly?
So the misuse of a P card, so first.
Well, I know what it means, but I mean, how do you manage it?
Well, first we have to identify that it's misuse, and then verify that what we believe was misuse is misuse. We initially notify, so we have an existing system that we use. It is notification of a P card violation. So we notify that individual or maybe that department they have violated our P card policy, and they have a number of days or time to respond to that, and either that is acknowledgement they made a mistake and how they intend to correct that, or they may disagree that they made a mistake. And at that point, we have to go further into our system, perhaps get legal involved and determine whether or not there is a difference of opinion of that use of that P card, and then see where the process takes us.
Could that ultimately, if the misuse is established, could that involve a clawback of some kind?
Yes, sir. It certainly could.
Okay, thanks.
And Mr. Robinson, before you go further, would it be fair to tell the public that many of these changes were prompted by the Hainsworth-Sinkler-Boyd report, and we published to the public certain things we promised to do?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, certain things we promised Mr. Moore would do. But also, this is in response to that. I just want the public to understand why some of this was generated.
Yes, it is. This work is the foundation for things that come forward. The way the local government process works is you establish the ordinance. The ordinance becomes law. And then the administrator establishes policy that are supported by this law that you have created. And that gives the administrator the teeth that it takes I'm lost of a word.
Enforce it.
To enforce, thank you. To enforce that policy based on ordinance as it's written. Thanks for that. Enforce.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions on that section where we are? No? Very good. There's a little change in 507, which is retention of documentation.
Actually,
The-
Mr. Robin?
Yes,
if I-
sir.
If I can interject real quick, going back to 506H,
H?
yeah, H, the elected officials.
Oh, yes, that's a
um,
good one.
And referencing 506B2, where it says negotiate contracts or delegate authority to negotiate contracts.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to be a little bit more clear as far as who's gonna delegate the authority? Are we having the purchasing director, procurement services director negotiate every contract for an elected official? Or is the elected official gonna ask, how's that relationship gonna work?
So we worked on that language some, and I'm glad you read that. It does state that it is the procurement services director's responsibility to negotiate contracts or delegate authority to negotiate contracts and submit contracts for approval or award. So it is that the procurement services director's job to do that. And understanding the complexity of some contracts that may be outside of the procurement services director's wheelhouse, that's a great opportunity to delegate some of that authority. Yet it does not remove the responsibility from the procurement services director to ensure that those contracts are negotiated properly.
Just so we don't get into any interpretation issues between staff and legislative intent, should we go back and clearly define when something would be delegated or who is to be delegated to for an elected official's department?
It may be very difficult. Every contract that comes forward is different. It always remains that director's job to do that. I don't know how we could further refine that in a way.
Would it be that if
That is
the
helpful.
elected official asked for them to do that?
Remember, we talked about it at the workshop.
I know we did.
And I'm sorry, I wasn't
Yeah.
at the
I'm putting it
workshop.
out there for
Yeah.
everybody, go ahead.
So the intent of the procurement service director has no connection to a specific contract. And I'm not saying that any elected official or any other person would intentionally make a mistake, but the nature of the procurement services director and not having any kind of connection to a contract or to a specific vendor for a contract eliminates that, well, I can't say eliminates, but removes that maybe opportunity for someone else to say, yes, I negotiated that.
And then,
You know,
same thing, if we're going to be having the ability to delegate authority, should it be written down as far as who and why they're delegating that authority to somebody else?
Can I just add one thing
Well,
to that?
Mr.
Well,
Passman's next.
we-
Go.
Okay. The specific paragraph we're talking about is elected and appointed officials. Within that, it's saying that the Public Procurement Services Director may delegate that authority to any one of those elected or appointed officials based upon what's in that paragraph.
Well, they're actually two separate things. So 506H only exempts the 506E when it goes back and references the E, the dollar limitation. But the 506B duties, there's no reference in that elected official section. So it's.
Right, in this
there's a gray
section is
area
not.
for the delegation and who's gonna negotiate the contracts for elected officials.
So in this sense, the person that the director may delegate to negotiate could be the individual who inspired the solicitation, or it could be an engineer. So it could be a department head, it could be someone that works for the airports. It could be an elected official, it could be an appointed official. So that list goes really, really long. I would suggest that we address that more in depth in the policy, and leave it more vague in the ordinance as the foundation for the requirement of the procurement
And
services
I'm
director.
fine doing that right now. I just wanna make
Okay.
sure that we do streamline that process and make sure that we don't have any unintended consequences when it comes to
It-
implementation.
I'm glad you said that too, unintended consequences. We spent hours of time in a small room negotiating these nuances of the language here, because it really is that important.
Mr. Robinson?
There is another place.
Councilman
in
Reeds
the-
wanted to add something.
There is another place in the ordinance where it, the duty of the procurement services director made it so that only he had that option to appoint members of a committee. So we changed that word from appoint to approve. And that gives, so just the change in that single word gives a little bit of flexibility in that process.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reed?
Just to piggyback on David, when you're negotiating and in the room and in this workshop, you talk about elected officials. I think of the sheriff and I think of the treasurer, just the two of them. Do they have a buy-in? Did they go through this with you? Did they give their okay, their feedback? What kind of exchange did you have there?
Absolutely. So one of the, so let's say they're entering a contract that is over $200,000 and it's not already appropriate in their budget, so we have to get back to that section. So it's something new that they have to come through this entire process. They would have been likely the individual who inspired this contract to come forward. These would likely have a number of members of a selection committee that are reviewing proposals or bids or qualifications that come in. And they are likely the subject matter expert for that item or service
Yes, sir.
that they are asking for. So it would be very smart of the procurement services director to include those members when they negotiate these contracts, especially them being the subject matter experts. That's why we put that flexibility in there that allowed that procurement services director to delegate that authority or to approve committee members versus appoint. That way, he's got the opportunity to use those experts that are presenting that solicitation in that process.
So as we move this forward, this language that's here now and what Mr. Bartholomew wants to put in, we've got a good buy-in from our elected officials then.
So let me answer that for a
I think
second.
so. We addressed it as best as
Yeah.
possible.
So we had a big workshop, and the treasurer sent information in, we discussed every one. Mr. Moore and Mr. Robinson met with the sheriff, correct?
We did?
And sent information to the treasurer. Mr. Catt, the auditor, weighed in, correct?
He did?
So that answers your question, Mr. Reeds. This wasn't done in a vacuum.
No, that's excellent.
Yeah, so just so you feel comfortable with that, they did reach out.
Appreciate that.
And we're still open to more input.
Well, we got one more coming,
It's
so
a
we'll
big
wait till we
document.
get there.
There's a lot, every word can matter in a document that's important. So, Mr. Bartholomew, you mentioned 506E, which is really important. This is elected and appointed officials. So in the first draft of this document, that section was not there. This section was removed from the existing code and placed into this code. Just to be clear.
No, I got you. Yeah, I went back
This,
and looked at the other.
yep,
one.
this language is from the previous code and entered in this code.
Thank you.
Okay,
We're still on the code.
that's E. So let's see, I'm gonna try and skip forward a lot.
Well, just for the public
ma'am.
and for any members that don't know, if you would go to invitation for bids
Mm-hmm.
versus request for qualifications versus request for proposals.
Right.
Because we did talk about that at the workshop, but I think it's important for everyone to know.
You want me to go through what each one?
I mean, they're all spelled out here,
They
but
are.
just real quick why they're
Certainly.
different.
So there's several different processes, and what Ms. Tabernick is talking about are different processes. The county, and it's not just the county, but state agencies, local governments, all use to procure items. So it's a different type of competitive solicitation. So an IFB is an invitation for bid. That invitation for bid is a process by which several vendors put forward their best price on a good or service. And most often, the local government, us being the county, we choose the lowest qualified bidder for that item, for that project. An RFP is a request for proposal. So there are times where there's flexibility in that item or that service that's being asked for. So we reach out to qualified companies and we ask them to put forward their best proposal. So they put forward their best proposal and their price for that proposal. And then the committee gets together, evaluates those proposals as presented. Sometimes they go and they just read the proposal. Sometimes they conduct interviews. Sometimes they conduct multiple interviews. Test shows, all types of different ways to evaluate the good or service that's being provided. So that's the RFP process. And finally is the RFQ process. These are the three most common processes that we use, although the code covers a few extras. The RFQ process is a request for qualifications. So we may not know exactly the item that we need to purchase or the service that we need to purchase, nor do we have the technical expertise to request a proposal. So we request different companies. Maybe it's an engineering company for qualifications, to invite them based on their qualifications to come and help us solve complex problems. So often a request for qualification is that way. Also included, there's some professional services that are exempt from federal law. They're exempt from competing with one another on price. So different types of professional services. So they would also have to use that request for qualifications form. Did I cover that?
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
Got that. I saw John and Brittany both stand up. Did y'all have anything to say on that? Like you were gonna say something? Brian, I'm sorry, Brian. Brian.
You popped up.
Kind of popped up like you.
Clarification on the delegation of authority section, but I think you're.
Did I get it?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question.
Go
On
ahead.
page 15, selection committee.
Yes.
I watched the video. I wasn't able to attend the workshop, but I watched it. At one point, there was discussion about using the word assembles a selection committee. But I see in this version, it says approved.
Yes.
And that wouldn't matter what that group was, whether it was elected official or not, that needed a selection committee. If I just want to be clear, the procurement service director would be the final word on approving that committee.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So any type of,
Selection committee would be.
yes, any type of competitive solicitation that required the use of a selection committee, those committee members would often be put forward by the individual who inspired the solicitation. But it absolutely needs to be that unbiased individual, the procurement services director, who approves that. So somebody can't stack the deck on one side or the other.
Right.
That's why that.
Even if it was a highly specialized field, like, okay.
There's always opportunities to find highly specialized people with knowledge that aren't necessarily from that same organization. There are often times that a selection committee may be made up of a member of the public that has some special expertise and expert knowledge, or we'll reach out to other members of our local municipalities and find other experts to bring in. So it's not biased by just all county employees from one department. That's not the best thing for us to do.
Good, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the major changes in the document, while we changed the format, we changed the numbering, and we changed some words and different things here and there, the major changes from the document that was presented to us by HSB on June 10th. So that document was that culmination of work that we talked about, months of work between that outside attorney and our staff and our legal team to develop that document. I just went over the major changes from that June 10th date to now, including comments from our workshop, comments from some citizens, comments from our elected and appointed officials, as well as your comments.
Can you talk about 2-525? You and I talked about 5-year terms of a contract, but you said we have some that extend past 5 years?
There are some contracts that extend by 5 years, that extend beyond 5 years, and each of those contracts would normally come forward for council's approval. So they would just come through the normal process loop. A good example of a contract that may extend beyond those years is our finance software. Our Munis software is millions of dollars to install. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on maintenance for this. every year, and it's typically a software, because of the intensity of the software and the intense use of it, that may have a contract life that extends 20 years or more. So that would be a good example of a contract that you would not want to change out every couple of years.
So there was a concern by the treasurer about the 5 years. So this would, she could still do 10-year contracts.
I don't see anything personally here. Now, what section were you again?
525.
525.
525.
I was busy
yeah.
looking at something else.
Bonds and security. Oh, yeah.
Where it says it's 5 years, the term of the contract and the conditions for renewal and extension.
Is there an unless there?
Maybe enter.
Yes.
Did you read the
Unless
unless?
otherwise approved by county council.
Yeah, unless
Yes.
otherwise approved, yeah.
I think that's what I was getting at. I just didn't read the unless. But yes, so those contracts that extend beyond that time would go through the process and come to county council for consideration.
All right, so that would answer it. Okay, anybody else have a question on this? Okay. All right, it moves to council.
So we have a few, those small things to address, services versus service, and the committees of county council. That we'll call them standing committees of county council, and that will solve that.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, thank you for your work on this.
You're
I know
welcome.
it's tedious, long, involved.
It's a lot. It wasn't just me. There's a whole team
know.
of people pulling our hair out. I have much less.
Okay, Mr. Lawson, you're up again.
So that item
Oh, yes.
does need a motion to go forward
Yeah,
to
you're gonna
council.
make a motion, yeah. Well, I was chairing this part.
No. Well, no, somebody else make it.
Anybody care to make the motion? Let's wake up.
I move this,
To
ordinance
council.
be moved to council for its consideration for repealing, replacing Beaufort County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 7, Division 4, Beaufort County Purchasing Ordinance, to establish new policies of centralized purchasing and competitive bidding for county departments and elected officials.
Thank you. Second?
Second that.
All right, Paula, second, Ms. Brown seconded. It will move to council. Thank you. All right, Mr. Lawson.
You need a vote.
Oh, yeah. Is there any objection? Can we pass it with no objection? If you object, we're gonna have to talk about it longer. But
When-
no.
Just a question, when would this be on the next, because it'll have to be public comment or a public hearing, right?
Yes,
For the
it's
next one.
good, 3 readings and
Three
public
readings,
hearing, which will be,
Is
I
there enough
think it's
time
on
for
today.
September 9th for the next meeting, or would that be?
That would be first reading. Public hearing will
Okay.
take place on the second.
Gotcha, sorry.
First readings today. Tonight.
Yes, we've advertised it, I apologize. This one is
Okay.
going forward, so maybe in the motion, move it forward tonight as a time-sensitive item.
it is a time
It is, and
sensitive.
that's why I
I
was
didn't
asking.
hear, I couldn't hear because y'all weren't close to the mic, I
Oh,
apologize.
sorry.
Who was it?
Probably me. All right, thank you. We'll be closer to the mic. Okay.
All right, so it will be on tonight's council meeting
Yes.
for a vote, and then obviously we'll still do a public hearing eventually on that of those 3 readings. Sorry, we just finished up number 9 then, boy, you guys took a long time. We have a hard stop at 5, so again, we need to get everything through here in the next hour. So if we move on to recommend approval to council of an ordinance authorizing Beaufort County Memorial Hospital to pledge revenues in connection with the issuance of South Carolina Jobs Economic Development Authority of its healthcare revenue bonds. And this, Ms. Ward, are you presenting?
It's actually, we have Hank Amundson here as well as Russell Baxley from.
Okay. Mr. Baxley, thank you for coming.
Chairman Lawson.
Again.
So you guys have the ordinance in front of you. Happy to answer any questions that you might have relative to the projects we're trying to finance with this $120 million revenue bond.
Any questions from anybody?
I'll make a motion that we move this forward.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bartholomew, second. Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will pass this without objection. Is there any objection? And there is no objection. Thank you
I'm
for
gonna
taking.
remember
the-
that question. That's a very good question you asked, to move things along.
I will
Well, we kind
next
of
time.
grilled him at the workshop, so.
And this also is a time-sensitive item. It is on the
It's on
council
tonight.
agenda
Yes,
tonight.
it is on tonight as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, let's move on to number 11, and that is recommend approval to council of an ordinance accepting the transfer of authority for conducting municipal elections from the town of Port Royal to the Beaufort County Board of Voter Registration and Elections.
I'll make the motion.
I think
I'll
we've done this
second that.
before many
We
times,
have,
so,
yeah.
so we got the motion, the second by Ms. Brown. Is there any more discussion? Ms. Audra, I don't think we need you.
Yeah,
No discussion? Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, this also, now is this something that would need to go to
right.
council
It
tonight?
goes to county council.
Okay. And this is an ordinance, or this a,
It is an ordinance, but it's not time sensitive.
Yeah, this one is not time sensitive.
It's gonna wait, yeah.
You can wait.
all right, good. Let's move on, number 12. Recommend approval to council of resolution authorizing the county administrator to accept block grant awards offered by the South Carolina Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services. And Ms. Burgess,
Yes.
thank you for coming. And
Thank you.
Ms. Burgess is the Director of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Department. So again, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chairman. This will be to accept the block grant funds that help to offset personnel costs for the Alcohol and Drug Department, also now known as Nexus Care of Beaufort County. So with this, we're looking to accept for treatment dollars in the total amount of $149,000, $691.07 for treatment. Let's see, $354,542.18. So these are both block grants that come down to the state of South Carolina via the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or federal block grant dollars that come to the single source, South Carolina Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, whereby the counties then, largely based on their population, will receive eligibility for block grant dollars. And this is the award for FY25 for prevention and for treatment dollars.
I'm happy to make the motion in the absence of questions.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. Unless you.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, you started it.
No, that's go right ahead, Alice. Okay. The
Okay.
community-
Ms.
no,
Howard's
it's the
made the
community-
motion. Is
it's
there a
community
second?
activity.
Mr.
Go
McCollum
ahead.
is the second?
Yep.
All right, is there any discussion?
We already talked about this.
Yeah, Mr. Glover.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed in your reporting, in the information reporting, what criteria will you be using to measure success?
That's a great question, Councilman Glover. Those are more or less outlined for us by the federal government and by the single state authority, South Carolina DeOtis. We have significant outcome measures that go both with prevention and with treatment. Many spreadsheets of outcome measures, in fact. And without going into deep detail, they really largely focus on things in prevention side, such as how do we disseminate information on alcohol and substance use, other substance use in the community to inform people about those negative effects? Do we provide them with alternatives to substance use, healthy activities, and things of that nature? On the treatment side, measures are geared around things like, are we effective in the services that we provide? Are they accessible to the citizens that we serve? So we have outcome measures aligned with those things. And we have target measures that we provide a report on monthly in something called Grants Management System, which is utilized by the state. And then that in turn data reports to the federal government on behalf of the state of South Carolina.
Are you working with other service provider, and when you talk about treatment, especially when you're dealing with alcohol and drugs and et cetera, you know, are you, because I don't know whether you have staff to handle that, so are you collaborating with other providers?
Absolutely, sir. So what we do provide is outpatient services, which is 2 levels of outpatient. Your basic, come in a couple of times a week, and then we have up to 9 hours a week of intensive outpatient that happens at our 2 locations here in Beaufort and also in Bluffton. And we have licensed and certified staff who provide those services on site. And then for individuals in the community who need something more intensive than that, such as residential services or medical detox, we have a network of people that we work with in partnerships and agreements so that we can help get people where they need to go, regardless of whether they're insured or uninsured. It also is important to note that these block grant funds help us provide treatment to everyone, regardless of ability to pay, so that when a person comes in and they are uninsured and unfunded, and they meet the federal income guidelines for below poverty, then we're able to provide those services to them at no cost. So we do have a whole lot of agreements where we work with other treatment providers and also many in the community, such as Beaufort Memorial Hospital, a Good Neighbor Free Medical Clinic, and Department of Mental Health, and on the list goes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, this will also be approved without objection. Thank you, Ms. Burgess, for being here today. Appreciate
sir.
that. All right, let's move on to number 13 in our agenda. And this is recommend approval of council of a resolution authorizing the county administrator to execute the economic development grant application regarding Project Micro and to submit it to the South Carolina Coordinating Council for Economic Development. And Mr. Hank Ubnenson, thank you for being here. And go ahead, just let us.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to go to executive session to get legal advice on this and potential contractual agreements at this time. It shouldn't be long, but we should go to executive session. That's my motion.
All right, and I did see that on the agenda summary. So is that something that we have motion? And is there a second?
No, okay.
All right, any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will go into executive session without objection, and I don't see any objection, so let's go to executive session very quickly.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be too long.
Out of executive session.
You need a motion out of that?
Yes, any motion? We did not make a motion.
Can I make a motion for you?
Yes, yes, sir, please.
Recommend we move approval of council of a resolution authorizing the county administrator to execute the economic development grant application regarding Project Micro and to submit it to the South Carolina Coordinating Council for Economic Development.
I'll second.
All right, and it's been seconded. Is there any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, this will actually, because it's time sensitive, be on tonight's council meeting.
Okay.
All right. All right, let's move on, and I know Mr. Chief Boulware has been patiently waiting back there for us. This one is for him. Recommend approval of a contract to pave around Bluffton Township Fire District's training building. Mr. Boulware, are you gonna come forward and talk about that with us? Thank you, Chief Boulware. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Back in May of 2015, the district had a project where we had constructed our maintenance facility. The funds that were slated for that, we did not have funds to complete the entire project, so we value engineered some of that to get all the structures and essential buildings. We were lacking some of the concrete around our training facilities. And we were just basically saving some of our impact fee account money to finish that project once we finished our remodel of the Sun City Fire Station, which is done. And so we're needing to move forward as part of the systems upgrade because we had to build a bigger training facility because of the growth that we had in Bluffton. So I worked with County Procurement Services to do a competitive bid process for that. We put it out for bid, we advertised it through the paper and everything, and we had 4 competitive bids came in. One of them was non-responsive. The lowest bid was MAJ Enterprises, who we are looking to move forward with and with a contract after a second reading of approval, if we can get to that point, to put concrete down in our training facility.
Any questions for Chief Boulware?
I have a question. Why the big disparity in the bids?
I don't know, I'm not a concrete guy, but I'm talking to other contractors and everything, I believe it's because other companies are busy and they could just throw numbers out, and if they get it, great. If not, they have plenty of work. We bid this out about 18 months ago, because that was before the Sun City renovation started, and the first bid we got unofficially was $385, and that was 18 months ago. So this $440 is more in line with what I think is reality today.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Chief Boulware?
I'll make a motion for this.
Mr. Tabernick made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Ms. Brown, seconded. Any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, this will be approved without objection, and it has been approved. And got one more question with regard to, Jared's probably wanting to ask. I know that Burnt Church Road, looking at expanding that same area right there where it is, and I heard we had a little incident because traffic backed up from a school last week because the fire trucks couldn't get out, but what's the status on the Burnt Church expansion?
It's finishing the environmental process and right-of-way acquisition. So it's in design, 60-70% design.
I did have some correspondences with somebody from the Highway Department about donating some property easement there behind our training facility, and I said, absolutely, what's there is definitely available to be shared. We don't have any growth projected for behind that training facility, so if there's land there that can help with that project, we're on board to help.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Now, that was off the radar, but appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so again, that moves on to County Council. At number 14, no, sorry, we just did 14, we're on number 15. Recommend approval for appointment to the Beaufort County Transportation Committee for a 4-year term with expiration date of August 2028. And just how we did with the Beaufort Jasper recently, board, we have more than one candidate. And everyone has the backup information on this. So this committee is looking at making a recommendation of one of these two candidates to county council for approval. So again, looking for any input that someone has, any discussion that we have in either candidate. And again, the council then will move this forward to county council.
Just from District 11, I suggest that Mr. Reitz have the floor.
Oh, wow.
Mr. Reitz?
Chairman?
Thank you very much for that, Larry. I appreciate it. I had the opportunity, and I know this is time sensitive here tonight, and I think we'll get into a few questions, but I had the opportunity to sit down with each of the candidates and meet with them. I've known one a lot longer than the other. I find them both to be very good. I found Mr. Johnson to be, I wish John O'Toole was still here because I think he's incredible with economic development and business. He's got a mixed-use facility up in Bluffton, I think in Logan's territory, if I'm not mistaken.
Washington Square.
I'm sorry?
Washington Square.
Washington Square. I think he's done a great job. You know, Diedrich Avocat has a tremendous amount of experience with the Port Authority of New York and a lot of different transportation modes. And one other thing I did too is I brought another council member with me because this is for District 11. And I wanted to make sure we got in the weeds on this. And, you know, again, I actually reached out to the president of the board, Lieutenant Colonel Gordon as well, and spent some time with him Friday. And he helped me solidify my choice, somebody that I'd like to nominate or put forward for your consideration. He talked about, he has a vast experience and knowledge of transportation, roads, and I think he talked about having to train and have seminars, and he said he would love to have somebody that has knowledge. And Diedrich Avocat has years of knowledge with roadways, surfaces, Port Authority, things with airports. He spent a lot of time in the town council with the adaptive traffic signal, which I think he actually initiated that. Mr. Johnson, on the other hand, also spent some time with the 278 corridor that was just disbanded in '23. So again, I think they're both good, but I want to nominate, after talking to the Lieutenant Colonel Gordon, I got to tell you, I have to nominate Mr. Avocat due to all his experience and years with roads and transportation. And I've known the man as well. I've spent a lot of time at town council meetings where he addressed many issues, and he not only does he have a lot of knowledge, but he brings a good decorum to him, a nice way to present things. So, you know, he brings a lot of knowledge, but he has the ability to communicate, and I think he'll get along very well. And I spent, maybe a half hour, 20 minutes with the Lieutenant Colonel, and again, I can't begin to tell you the knowledge that man brings to this. So I think he'd be best suited with Diedrich Avocat. And Paula, would you like to, you spent a couple of those.
Yes, I interviewed both gentlemen with Mr. Reese, and both very impressive, both excellent candidates. I like them both. You know, if this was a horse race, you know, it'd come in really close. But Mr. Avocat, I believe, has the edge over Mr. Johnson because, I don't know if you, our chairman, Mr. Passmus, we were at a SCAC conference in July 2023. I don't know if you all remember this conversation, but Mr. Passmus was talking about transportation for Beaufort County. He was talking about some more international flights out of Savannah. And he was also talking about the Port Authority. And this gentleman, Mr. Avocat, he worked for Mario Cuomo back in the 80s when he was mayor of New York City. And he's got has a lot of knowledge regarding Port Authority, transportation in New York, all that. So my selection is Mr. Avocat as well.
And just let me back up and ask if there's anybody here that has a question of what I did with all three, you know, even the chairman of the board, Lieutenant Colonel.
Yeah, I have a question about that. Is it your statement that the chairman of this transportation committee has selected Mr. Avocat as his choice?
I never said that, and I don't
Oh,
know
I
where you.
misunderstood.
No, I
I'm
don't know
sorry.
where you would get that from, but no, I'm saying I think he'd be best served by,
Okay,
my recommendation.
okay.
So just to clarify, Mr. Gordon, who is the chair of the CTC, and I'm the liaison of that committee, he did not say, I want this person or that.
No.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it's interesting
I just wanted to
because.
clarify that.
No, I appreciate that, Tab, because, being a liaison, did you interview either one of these candidates?
No, I read the
Did-
resume, but my job is to see who would best fit that committee.
I'm with you. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm not even sure if Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Gordon interviewed either one of these candidates. So I don't know. Again, it's my district. I meet a lot of people. I spend a lot of time. And I'd like your support for my recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the
Yep,
floor?
go ahead.
Yeah, I guess that when we are doing this, of course, it's the obligation of the person who represents that district to bring forward the names of the people and then make a recommendation, really not a nomination, because we don't have any authority to nominate people. We just recommend it for the consideration of the full council. And I just want to talk briefly about Mr. Johnson's background. Mr. Johnson is the founder and principal of Speyside Partners, which is a real estate development company in the county, and he develops commercial and estate projects. He oversees strategic planning and business development and investment management for that company. Before that, he was with the Market Field Asset Management Group as the director of research. He led their research team, providing critical insights into market trends and investment strategies. He developed and maintained economic models to guide portfolio management decisions. Prior to that, he was with Wilkinson O'Grady and Company as an investment analyst portfolio manager and the head of business development. So he managed client portfolios with a focus on risk-adjusted returns. He led business development initiatives to expand the firm's client base and assets under management. Before that, he worked for Solomon Brothers, and he managed their fixed income department. He's a graduate of the University of Virginia Darden School of Business, where he received a Master in Business Administration. And he's also a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he received his Bachelor of Arts. He's a member of the board of the Savannah Music Festival, member of the board of the University of South Carolina Beaufort Education Foundation, member of the board of the Telfair Museum, and he was, as Mr. Reitz pointed out, the chairman of the 278 Gateway Corridor Committee. He lives on Hilton Head with his wife, Caroline, and his skills are certainly in investment strategy and analysis, commercial real estate development, portfolio management, leadership, and team management. He provided a statement to us saying that since he moved here in '06, he's been struck by how important planning and upgrading our transportation system is to our future, particularly as it relates to the vibrant economic growth of our region. He worked to advocate for the passing of the 2016 transportation sales tax referendum, leading a group of citizens who spent a number of months prior to the vote making presentations and answering questions about the referendum. He was appointed by the Hilton Head Town Council in 2020 to chair the 278 Gateway Corridor Committee. The committee was tasked with working with stakeholders, citizens, and the South Carolina Department of Transportation during the environmental assessment. Since that committee was dissolved in '23, he's continued to work on this project to help move it forward and finally see the town of Hilton Head give the project its municipal consent. Because of his deep belief in how important transportation is to the future and his experience working with Beaufort County citizens and governments on this issue, he thinks he could be a valuable resource on the Transportation Committee. I met him during his chair of the 278 Gateway Corridor Committee, where he really provided incredible leadership, getting a number of recommendations on the quality of the project to be adopted by the Department of Transportation. I think everyone in the community holds him in very high esteem with regard to the work that he did there. So just to create the picture, there are two people from Tom's district that are interested in this position. Tom has recommended Mr. Advocat because he believes in him. And I believe that Mr. Johnson's record speaks for itself, and I believe that he would be a great and very important asset to this committee. And I would recommend that we consider his candidacy.
All right, so we have two candidates. So what is the will of this committee? I think it would be for someone to make a motion to nominate one of these two and then get a second and then
I'll
vote on it.
motion.
And then if that person passes with the majority, well, then that person then would be, and we're just making a recommendation to council. Council is the one that would actually then approve this person for that committee position. So, Ms. Brown, go ahead if you want to make a
Motion
motion.
to motion for Mr. Advocate.
All right, is there a second?
Second that.
All right. Any more discussion on the first candidate? So, no discussion. Is this something that I guess we need to vote, have a vote? Sarah, if you can please help us with a vote count, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Brown?
Yes for Mr. Advocate?
Councilmember Reeds?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
No.
Councilmember Glover?
No.
Councilmember Dawson?
No.
Councilmember Bartholomew?
Yes.
Vice Chair McEllen?
No.
Chairman Passamit?
No.
Committee Vice Chair Tabernick?
No.
Committee Chair Lawson?
I will also say no.
The motion fails.
All right, is there a motion then for the second candidate?
I'd like to make a motion and nominate David Johnson for the position on the Transportation Committee, representing District 11 in the Beaufort County Transportation Committee.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Any more discussion before we have a vote? All right, Sarah, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chair McEllen?
Yes?
Committee Vice Chair Tabernick?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeds?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
No.
Councilmember Glover?
Yes.
Councilmember Dawson?
Yes.
Councilmember Bartholomew?
Yes.
Committee Chair Lawson?
Yes.
The motion passes. Chairman Passamit, sorry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, so that'll be moved on to council.
Next
and-
meeting.
Yes, and so boards and commissions appointments. We will take this all at one time unless someone has an objection to that. Recommend approval of appointment of Michael Murphy to the Bluffton Fire District Board for a 4-year term with the expiration date of August 2028. Solid Waste and Recycling Board, recommend approval of the appointment of Mark Feinberg to the Solid Waste and Recycling Board for a 4-year term with the expiration date of August 2028. Zoning Board of Appeals, recommend approval of the reappointment of William Cecil Mitchell III to the Beaufort County Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term with the expiration date of August 2027. The Sheldon Fire District Board, recommend approval of Adrian Scott to the Sheldon Fire District Board for a 4-year term with the expiration date of August 2028. And I would ask we take those all at one time unless someone wants to pull one separate.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so we're going to accept all these at one time. Is there any objection to accepting all these board members? Seeing no objection, they all will be passed on then to county council for approval. Is there anything else before this committee that needs to come forward? Seeing nothing, we are adjourned. Thank you.